Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We might make a start. Welcome to the meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel for the 20th of February 2020. We are the panel who have been appointed by the Council to determine specific development applications, including the development applications that are on the agenda today. And that's in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. My name is Paul Vagotis. I'm the chair for today's panel meeting, and with me today, to my left, I have Ms. Helen Deegan, who's one of our expert panellists. To my right, Mr. Michael Levy, who's one of our experts, and to my far left, our community representative, Mr. George Vardis. The panel acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which this meeting is being held as the Bertigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm required to advise you that under the provisions of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, this meeting is being live streamed and will be made available on the Council's website. Importantly, everyone must ensure that they speak into the microphone clearly when you come up to make submissions before the panel. When speaking at this meeting, members of the public should ensure their speech is respectful and appropriate. A person who uses defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language may be exposed to liability for which the Council or this panel takes no responsibility for. Any part of this meeting that is held in a closed session will not be recorded. The panel have received and completed assessment reports from the Council staff in relation to all 5 applications on the agenda. The panel have also undertaken inspections today of nearby residents and localities for all the 5 matters on the agenda, although we didn't look at one of the sites concerning the Council's childcare centre. As required by the Local Planning Panel Code of Conduct, panel members are required to disclose any conflicts of interest in respect to any matter on the agenda today. The relevant forms prescribed by the Department of Planning have been completed and are tabled for the Council to include on the online minutes of the meeting, and they're also available for scrutiny by any members of the public today, so they're right there. No panel member today has disclosed any conflict of interest in relation to any of the matters on the agenda. As we progress through the matters on the agenda, only those persons who've been registered to speak at this meeting will be permitted to address the panel. Each person will be provided with a 3-minute opportunity to address the panel, but if you need a little bit longer, as the chair, I have the discretion to grant that extension. In each item, we'll hear from objectors first and then from the applicant. I would ask those persons that are seeking to address the panel to come forward and sit in front of the panel and talk clearly into the microphone. Once we've heard all the various speakers who have been registered to speak for particular applications, we'll be then ready to move to the next application. Members of the public are free to leave after their item of interest has been concluded. Once we've heard from all of the people who have been registered to speak on each application, we will then adjourn the meeting and deliberate on each of the matters and then make decisions which will be published on the Council's website in the closed session. We'll now call the first item on the agenda, which is the maintenance depot at Beverley Park Golf Course. We have registered to speak, firstly, Paul Hoffmans. So, Mr. Hoffmans, if you'd just like to come forward, sir, and take a seat and speak clearly into the microphone.
Paul Hoffmans. I live at 43 Burgess Street, Beverley Park. Thank you all for allowing me to address you today, and thank you for coming to visit. If a building 4.5 times larger is constructed, the fabric and ambience of our backyards will change forever. I have a wife and children, and we want that current ambience to remain. There is no reason why this residential and recreational environment should be allowed to change. Having such a large industrial style building in our faces is unacceptable. Today you have seen what I and other neighbours have to put up with. You've seen the photos, you've got a copy of this. The club illegally leaves hazardous materials and waste laying around outdoors. The area behind my back fence is constantly untidy, with rubbish, filthy garbage bins strewn all over the place, with rats that run into my backyard. If the building is constructed well away from residential homes, these problems would not be such a concern. The DA relies on questionable acoustics data recorded several houses further away from the proposed building than my house to reduce the volume levels, together with prediction of the noise that there is no way of verifying. The situation is not getting any better with a shed that is 4.5 times larger. It does not need to be that big, does not need to have an external balcony, doesn't need so many showers and toilets or such a large staff lunch area. Even with the guidance Frank Bates received through the 10 points stated to him by the previous panel, he still has not provided you with a DA that meets your requirements. He does not want to comply with the 10th point. I have even tried to be cooperative by suggesting something smaller and is more in line with the footprint of the current building running east-west so that the storage bins could be located further away. But overall, it is more in harmony with the community of residential homes around the golf course to have the maintenance facility well away from the homes. It can be out in the middle of the golf course or even down along Ramsgate Road. Seeking approval of this DA is not like trying to get approval to build a new house on a standard block of land where it can be easily assessed against some development control plan for compliance. There is no development control plan specific to a maintenance shed on public recreational land. And so being public recreational land, it is the views of the residents of that area that counts. It is not just about what Frank Bates wants. All but one of the public submissions lodged about the DA is in objection to it. This very high rate of objection should not be ignored. I have made attempts to meet with Frank Bates, all without success, despite the slogan of "Your Community Club" proudly painted all over the club. The golf course is a public facility, and so surely if objectivity and fairness counts for anything, Frank Bates should respond positively to the concerns raised by affected residents. I ask respectfully that you be balanced in your deliberations, acknowledge the serious concerns of the residents, and tell Frank Bates to talk to us to find a compromise solution. How about you do that now? Either that or throw this DA out altogether.
Okay. Now, Mr. Hoffmans, we may need to ask you some questions. So can I ask you to remain seated? And I'll just see if there are any questions. I mean, I don't have any. I've had a look at your dwelling this afternoon, so I'll just go and ask the other panelists to see if there's any questions. Salib?
Yeah, no further questions.
Mr. Vardas? No. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just check to make sure I was listening.
Now, speaking on behalf of the golf course is Mr. Andrew Robinson, Town Planner. Mr. Robinson, please come forward. Mr. Robinson, obviously you've heard the submission by the resident.
I have, yes.
And we had the benefit of visiting 3 of the sites that adjoin your client's development this afternoon, and so we're aware of the proximity.
Okay.
All right.
Good. Well, thank you, panel, for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. As you're aware, this matter was considered at the panel meeting back in October last year, and I had just been engaged by the club to assist them at that point, and the panel at that meeting chose to defer the application, and the applicant was given 90 days to provide some additional information. As set out in the assessment report, I think we've satisfied 9 of the 10 matters that were in the panel minutes. The 10th matter was a matter that required some design changes to be made to the building, one of which was in relation to the sand and soil storage bins that the club has. And I'd basically just like to talk to the panel members about that issue. The reason that 3 options were provided to council at that time weren't as options to be considered as part of our proposal. They were more put to council to say, we've done this study, this is why we don't believe that this is an appropriate location for the soil and sand bins. Now, what I've actually done is superimposed onto this site plan The report recommends option 2, which would put the sand and soil bins in this location here. Now, as you can see,
near the fairway.
basically that's within the fairway. So the fairway comes around here,
Yeah.
the bins would sit in there. From an operational point of view, the club said that really isn't very satisfactory. The other option that was talked about in the report was option 3, which was to bring the building back to a 9-metre setback. That would bring the bins much closer to the building. But of course, we've heard the residents' concerns about the proximity of the building. The idea has been to push it away to a 16-metre setback.
Yeah.
We've got the existing trees along there. We're proposing an understory of Acmina Smith, I think so, it will form a hedge. Just having a look at the, the option 2 drawing. With the proposed location, so it was set on an angle, 5.5 metres from the fence. It was chosen because this is a solid brick fence section on the back of 8 Weenie Street. The bins are filled 3 times a year, never occurs before 7 a.m, never occurs after 5 p.m. We demonstrated with our application that a delivery truck could turn in there and ingress and egress in a forward direction. So we would ask that the panel reconsiders the location of the bin to that western side, to that east, to leave it on the eastern side, on the basis that relocating it to the western side does impinge on the course. There was just one further matter in the report that talked about some design changes.
Yeah.
Those design changes related to the roller doors on the eastern elevation. They were actually changed, and there was some confusion, and those drawings didn't actually make it to council. But you can see here that the roller doors have gone, and they've been replaced with fire doors. So, if the application were to be approved at CC stage, that design amendment that's talked about in the report has already been made. Thank you.
All right. Have you, you've had a look at the site, the way it's been conducted?
I have, yes.
Okay, well, from what we saw today, it leaves a somewhat sour taste in our mouths, so to speak, with the way the storage of material external to the building, empty containers, sandstone blocks on pallets, less than satisfactory as far as we're concerned. That was our first impression of the way this place is being conducted. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel with respect to a plan of management? And can I say, the way you operate, and from what we're told, and you know, I appreciate it's a one-dimensional comment from some of the neighbours up front. I mean, they tell you their side of the story, and I'd like to hear your side of the story. As early as 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, they start to arrive, the greenkeepers.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the existing situation. So what you've got is a situation where, at the moment, the machinery is all kept in that fairly small shed.
Yeah.
If they do arrive it's not always 3:30, I understand, but when they do arrive at 3:30, all of the machinery has to be driven out of the shed, so that you've got multiple mowers and vehicles starting up and moving out. Then they sit. The idea is that they're then driven off and they start mowing from the centre of the course. They mow the centre of the course out. The whole point of the maintenance building is to improve the situation, to get all of that untidiness out of the way. The machinery would all be stored in the shed, and the idea is that with the additional room, only those machines that need to come out. So if a particular mower is going to a particular fairway, that mower can come out through the door. You're not moving all of the mowers out. You may have 3 mowers going out instead of moving 5 or 6. And the idea is that the building has been designed to provide some attenuation, some noise. It's further away from the neighbours' property, and the idea will be that the vehicles will all now come out on the western side and then move out to the centre of the course. So there's a very small window of the machines moving out. And if you read in the acoustic report, basically the acoustic report is saying that there wouldn't be any sleep disturbance. It wouldn't exceed the sleep disturbance criteria at that time of the morning if the tractors or the mowers are driven straight out and to the centre of the course. So I think the idea is that the club is looking to improve the existing facility. It's been there for 50 or 60 years. It's not fit for purpose anymore. The staff don't have proper amenities. And I think that the idea will be that once they have a fit for purpose building, then you'll see a quite different situation down there. I think it's a matter of there's limited room down there. When the machinery is all in the shed, it's at capacity. And I think that there was an operational plan of management put in with the amended documentation that sets out, there's an early start procedure which documents all of those things that I've just talked about, plus a number of other things. It talks about staff ratios, it talks about work hours, all those sorts of things. So
I noticed that there was a number of like vehicles there that would appear to be private vehicles of the greenkeepers. Is that the case?
That's the case. So there'd be 4 full-time staff and 4 part-time staff who generally work on a Monday to come and help the club out. They may be there on other days. So the idea was there were no parking rates. So the 8 parking spaces that are allocated on the site plan were designed so that all 8 greenkeeping staff would have a parking spot on site in a formal situation.
So therefore, there's 2 very heavy vehicles on the site at the moment, one behind the shed and one which appears to have fencing on it. What's the status of those 2 vehicles? Because they clearly aren't related to the services.
I would need to check with the club. I mean, the members of I have someone here that I can ask if you'd like.
Well, we're told it's got something to do with Cogger Oval. There's some fencing that's used for a temporary.
Definitely has to be moved because the grasses around it.
You know, we're told this by the neighbours that are living with this 24/7. That's all.
No, unless I ask the club, I don't know the answer to that. Sorry, I'm not aware of who owns the truck or what it's doing there.
Mr. Levy, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. I understand that the reason for the sizing of the building is so that things that are currently happening outside can be contained inside. There seems to be really extensive sealed areas around the building, and in particular looking at the car parking area here, where you've got a row of parking spaces and possibly 20 metres of sealed area behind. There's no entries to the building there. There's no.
That's right.
So I'm just wondering what's actually driven the width of that that sealed area, and I think equally on this side as well. That they, I mean, look, can't see what that overall width is, but it's potentially 15 metres of sealed area, and I understand you will need some access to that, but just wondering what's actually driven the extent of sealed areas.
First of all, with the area at the front of the site here, the parking was put up against the fence line to enable the truck to come in and access to the storage bins, because the storage bins,
So we've got
shown
storage bins on the other side.
so you've had option 2 inserted in your drawing package.
I think that's what's
That's the
being
subject of
recommended
our
to
assessment.
us.
That's the one that's recommended.
And it's part of the subject of our assessment report that we have before us.
Yeah.
That's right. What I'm saying is that wasn't our application,
This was it.
and that's not the application that we made. The application we made was to locate the storage bin here, and that was the issue I was talking to you about today. To ask whether the panel would reconsider that decision. That's what drove the parking spaces there. We had a previous design which had parking in here. That's when the storage bin was located in here in the original scheme. But that is why you've got so much hard paved surface there.
But was this prepared as an option and presented to the council, this layout?
No. There was an option study done, and when I submitted to council, I wrote to council and said, this is our application, this location here. This is why we've done this other study, and this is why we don't believe we can relocate, from an operational point of view, relocate the storage bins from the eastern side to the western side, because it impinges onto the course.
And when we talk about impinging onto the course, apart from the physical side of things, is there a concern that golf balls might hit some of the workers, or why is that option not feasible?
It was basically because it would be located within the fairway. Potential for golf balls to hit it. It wasn't potentially so staff. Greenkeepers, it was more the fact that it's just a hazard on the course. you would normally have a clear fairway. And the reason it's set that far from the building is that's the point of entry and exit to the building. So all the vehicular traffic comes in and out of, in and out of this door here, through here. So there's your
it goes around
neighbouring
in
residents.
forward direction.
That's right.
Circulates.
That's right. That's right.
And that can't be redesigned?
It could be redesigned, yes. I think it was just for the sake of this option study. This wasn't this wasn't done in any other fashion other than to show the bins here. And I think the draftsperson just put the line there, showed it as hard paved, because that would be where the truck would need to back to. So what you'd have is the truck would come down Weenie Street, turn into Batty Avenue, and then reverse down to the bins and then drive out in a forward direction. So that was why there was so much hard paving shown there. But it was simply this is a study that's been done to demonstrate why, from an operational point of view, it's preferable not to be there.
If there were some changes to the entry on that side, is it possible to move the bins adjacent to the building, which would certainly remove them further from the fairway?
Get them closer.
Under that option?
So why, in other words, why can't you use one of those walls?
That door could come to there.
Yeah. So one of the western wall would be the back of a storage bin.
And not have that door at all and push the bin up to there.
Well, have an alternative door where...
Yeah, an alternative door. So you have the bins which are part and parcel of the building and are then facing the openings to the bins, storage bins, bulk storage bins face the west.
The issue I see with that is then delivering material, because at the moment it's a tip truck, so that it backs up
3 times a year. I mean, to have such a big, wide area and sealed area for what's effectively potentially 6 deliveries a year.
Well, the other way you'd have to sort of dump it on the hard stand and then use a bobcat to. I don't know that you wouldn't have the turning circle width to get the delivery vehicle to come around if the opening's on the front. I mean, we haven't looked at that. That's something that could be looked at, I suppose.
Yeah. When you say the turning circle width, because it's not going to be within the bitumen, I mean, you've got a golf course you turn around
This is the fairway, so you'd be encroaching into the fairway.
Well, yes, but I mean, if you are encroaching onto the fairway, and I'm assuming that the truck has, if it's 6 or 10 times a year, the frequency isn't that bad.
No, look, that's something that could be looked at.
It's not, like a landscape supply depot in the normal sense where you have a daily coming and going of deliveries and dispatch. Because the concern, one of the concerns that the residents raise is the use of the storage bins, and obviously the proximity of the building and the facilities to their boundaries.
Well, I think that's been addressed in terms of the
building
now
may have addressed that, but the storage bins, if you look at your proposal, the one that you've presented to us this afternoon, which is your preferred option. Look at the proximity of the storage bins to the resident there on the corner of, is it Weenie Street?
It's Weenie Street, that's right. And as I said, that's why it was located there.
Once
that's grown, that will be a hedge.
Well, that property that you're adjacent to, where that isn't a full fence,
They've got an
is an open fence, and they have windows that look directly out.
That is there, and that's a solid.
May I ask if you were keen to pursue this other option, would you entertain the thought of reducing the scale of the facility and physically moving those storage bins around and into front of the area? We've got so much bitumen and area into here. We can see some very easy redesigns that can be there, but in its current position, its impact would be quite significant. There's nothing stopping that. Could I see people over here? Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, so, there's nothing stopping. I know it might impact their amenity, but, there's a lot of space in here. There's a lot of ability to bring a vehicle in. This could all be manoeuvred here and face this direction if it was necessary. If this is such a big issue for the course in terms of its impact on the fairway, these are still achievable in this location. It just requires a little bit of loss of amenity for maybe the employees rather than a permanent resident.
That's right.
And that would be far more acceptable
Yeah.
and manageable in a workplace than it is for a private resident.
Well, that's certainly something that could be looked at. I'm sure the club would entertain that idea.
I think we would not entertain that at all,
Okay.
given the circumstances of this property.
Yeah.
But we certainly could entertain something that if it was integrated in and you looked at this as a scale, this is a very big building from what's there now.
Yeah.
It is, but my understanding is it was designed to cater for the equipment that they have. So that there's a certain amount of equipment that needs to be stored in there and there. You've got your fuel storage bin, you've got your wash down area. So it wasn't, let's just build the biggest maintenance building we can build. It was a lot bigger there was an original scheme before I was involved in the project. I think it's been reduced. I won't say how much because I don't recall but it was significantly reduced from the original scheme. And I think that now sits, if all of the machinery that needs to be stored in there and all the other equipment is in there, that was the size requirement. But certainly, I'd be happy to say that the club would be happy to look at relocating the storage bins to there if that was.
If this isn't going to be suitable, this has too much of an
Well,
impact.
yes.
It's over here, but it could be.
Yeah.
Could certainly be moved into a much better location, so its impact was further reduced.
Right.
Oh, sorry, you just touched on the reason for the size. You would have heard the submission of the neighbour. One of his points was that it is much larger than it should be, said 4.5 times the size. Is it your position, as you just indicated, that that's what the club believes it requires to satisfy its greenkeeping needs and the services of its staff?
That's right. I mean, the golf course has been there for many years. I think the building was built in the and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was built in the 1960s. The mowers and all the greenkeeping equipment was quite different then. You've got much larger mowers, you've got much larger equipment. I think the golf club house additional staff, greenkeeping staff now. Obviously, course preparation before competition days. They have numerous mowers out. And my understanding is that they have said to the draftsperson that prepared the drawings, this is the equipment we need to store in here, design the building so that it will fit all of that equipment in there.
Notwithstanding the fact that they back onto residents. That's part of the criteria, isn't it, Mr. Robinson? I mean, you know, I would have thought that any clever designer would have had regard to that. Anyway, we've heard your submission. I think we understand the issues that you have from an operational point of view and your needs and requirements. We've also heard what the residents have had to say. So unless there's anything else, I don't think there's any further questions of the panel. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The decision will be taken later today and published on the council's website. That concludes that matter. We move to the next matter on the agenda, which is 248 Railway Parade, Cogra. And we have a plethora of speakers. Who would like to go first? Mr. Ken Zhou? Mr. Zhou, are you available? Please come forward, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I could, those persons that are registered to speak in relation to this matter, I mentioned earlier that there was a 3-minute window opportunity for you to speak. I don't have a problem bending that rule, but please don't repeat what a previous speaker has raised, because we don't need to hear it 14 times. All right, so if I could just alert you to that, please. Mr. Zhou, would you like to commence?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Ken Guo. I'm the resident, lives in 250 to 258 Railway Parade, Cogra.
So sorry, could you just place yourself?
So whereabouts are you here?
It's right next to the
This side?
PA proposed building.
So this is the main road?
This is where the railway line is.
Yeah.
So you're here.
607.
You're here.
Yeah.
You're on this one.
You're in this block.
If I show you the diagram.
Okay, he's in this block.
So that is the.
Yep. This one here?
Yeah. So this particular unit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
So the apartment I'm living in is just located next to this DA proposed building
Yep.
with no distance or any gaps at all. So to be honest, I've never seen such a building like this before, which is definitely not feasible in the community. So hereby and all of the other residents here would like to object this DA proposal. So here's another diagram here. So here is the balcony view.
Right. Yep.
This is looking out of this, it's standing here looking out.
If you're
Yep.
standing
Yep.
at the balcony,
Looking out.
here are the
Yep.
view that you
Yep.
can see. So on the balcony of my apartment is facing to the northeast direction, where you can see the magnificent Sydney Tower views in north direction and the beach water views in east direction. I have to say this is the most enjoyable moment with my family when we are at home sitting at the balcony,
Yep.
enjoying a cup of coffee or tea, looking at these views. However, when I received this DA notification, I was totally shocking.
Yeah, lose all your view.
Yeah, I cannot believe this is happening. So instead of looking at these views, I need to look at a bunch of strangers at the boarding house. And of course, I don't want them to checking on us as well.
Yeah.
So our family privacy must be protected. And apart from this, my apartment is the best spot here to receive the sunlight in the daily basis.
Yep.
So if this boarding house is showing up, the sunlight coming to my balcony is totally blocked. And plus, I don't want to hear some kind of statement saying, oh, hey, the resident is still can receive at least 2 hours sunlight. So this is not the reason I purchased this property. When I own this property, I expected all the sunlight whenever it's available can be captured by my balcony. Yeah.
Right.
And in terms of the public issue, this DA does not have appropriate stormwater disposal, which is the necessary document for us to understand how the stormwater would run off throughout the water pipes.
Right.
Yeah, this is necessary to help us to prevent the flooding on the natural environment.
Okay.
Okay. And another issue is, plus these 4 levels of the car lift would dramatically increase the negative impact on the community and the residents as well. So as this car lift is located at the busy traffic area, so it would definitely increase the waiting time for the vehicles going into the lift, or the public vehicles going past through this busy area, which can cause a huge traffic jam during this peak hour.
Yep.
And on top of that, after this assessment conducted by the council, this DA fails to satisfy all the clause of the law from the Environmental Planning and the Assessment Act 1979. Although I'm not familiar with this clause of the law, but there's one thing I'm certain of is this law is used to protect our community, our public, and the residents in a positive way that can lead us into economical, environmental, and feasible lifestyle. Also, since this DA proposal violates this law, it must be stopped and eliminated. Of course, I'm aware of that council's recommendation is refusal of this DA. So I'm just here to emphasize my statement and want to express the feeling to the council is me and the other residents are on the same page with the council. So you have 100% support from us about this decision.
All right.
So we will really appreciate that if this DA proposal can be confirmed as refusal at last. Yeah.
All right. Can I ask you, when you bought your unit, did it strike you that there was a reasonable expectation that there was going to be a building on the corner?
No.
So you always thought that it'd remain that it's a
Yeah,
mechanical
it will
repair
remain
shop?
the existing condition when I purchased this unit.
Okay.
And of course, when I purchased this unit, the most important factor when I purchased this unit is I can see these views, the city views and the water views. This is also the factor that I can maintain my property's value. However, if this boarding house is just showing up like that, it will totally block all the views and the sunlight,
Right.
and which of course can cause the depreciation of my unit.
Right.
This
Okay.
is so not going to happen. It's not economical.
I think that's, we understand that.
Okay.
All right, I'll just see if there's any questions for the panel. Levy?
No, no further questions.
Just quickly, so is it the case you don't believe that any development should take place next door?
No, I do believe the DA proposal would happen, but I never expect that it would blocking my views and the sunlight in this way.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, understood. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Yang Ming Yang.
Oh, lovely, thank you.
Is Yang in the gallery? No. Ziyoi Liang? No. Yaming Zhao? That you, ma'am?
Yeah.
Sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly.
It's okay.
Right, now you're at Blake Street, Cogra, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
So you're around the corner here.
It's B705,
Yeah.
Unit 3,
This building?
number 3.
Number 5,
Number
705.
Yeah, 705, 3 Blake Street, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
yours.
So, yes, so firstly, thank you for letting us have the opportunity to speak out. And the first thing actually I'm from the building B, not really from the building A labels, but as belong to the whole building, right? So we still will consider borrowing if the boarding house about that high, they will definitely block our neighbor's view. And at the same time, because when you have a boarding house, we never know what kind of the people will live in there. So we will consider about the safety and security issue as well. And also for, of course, we will consider about the apartment value, of course, right? And because we expect that Cogra is very nice and good suburb, and we expect that apartment in there is going to have a very reasonable good value on the market, on the property market. So we expect the council will have a very good plan for when they approve the DA. So when we considering, for my personal, when I'm considering is like say if approved for the boarding house, we will quite worry about kind of the people living there. And considering the whole street with the main street and also the 3 Black Street, that area, right? We're considering is more people in and out about that corner. So we consider about the traffic, the accident thing, because that's also the opposite way is the small bridge is connected to the another side of the Cogra Street. So we will consider about the traffic around there as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah. Another thing that I say more consider is about the, because when the boarding house on the building A, when you face over the building, they will be on the right-hand side of the building, right? So if when the building has more than 8 level, what we understand, so if that way, they will definitely block inside our internal garden. So it's also kind of the issue to affect the whole building internal common area, affect all the neighbors, their entertaining time, the actual kind of like the, because when they face on that way, they will easy to create more kind of pollution and rubbish thing. So those kind of things we also considering for that.
All right. Is that your submission?
Yeah, most of that.
We'll just see if there are any questions. Please, Stephen?
No.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Thomas Cook, from Willow Tree Planning.
Good afternoon. My name's Thomas Cook. I'm from Willow Tree Planning. I'm here representing the Owners Corporation residents at the site next door at 250 to 258 Railway Parade, for whom we lodged a submission on their behalf on the 10th of December 2019.
Sorry, 254 to 258, is that correct?
250 to 258.
Thank you.
Yes. So firstly, I'd just like to establish that we support the recommendation of council and reasons for refusal. The matters which I would like to raise today has largely been covered in our submission. I would like to reiterate some of those issues which cause an adverse and unacceptable impact on from the proposal on the site next door, therefore not satisfying relevant planning framework, especially section 4.15 of the EP&A Act. The biggest issue and concern that we found is in relation to the setback and so the setback to the western boundary being on the upper levels 5 to 7. This is providing approximately a 0 setback, resulting in a 3 metre building separation to the residence building next door. Now, I do appreciate that this development for boarding house is not subject to SEP 65 in the Department Design Guide. However, in a lot of cases, those guides are used as, I guess, guidelines for impacts on those residents next door for commercial developments, etc. There's been really no consideration of the residents next door and their amenity. The impact is further compounded by the adverse impact to the eastern facing balconies, levels 5 to 7 on the adjoining site, which, as I said, is approximately 3 metres. The applicant's justification for this setback and building separation is due to the site being site next door, sorry, 250 to 258 Railway Parade, being developed and having setbacks which are non-compliant and therefore constraining the site subject to this development application. This justification is not considered to be well-founded or acceptable, as irrespective of any previously approved outcomes, including any approved non-compliances, the proposal must still satisfy the consideration of the section 4.15 of the EP&A Act, particularly in relation to environmental impacts, suitability of the site, and being in the public interest. In this respect, the proposed development is not considered to satisfy these requirements. This is further evident in the raft of DCP non-compliances, which are detailed quite comprehensively in Council's assessment report. So I won't go into those in too much detail, but just in summary, a few relating to the amenity of those neighbours next door, environmental impacts, and also the overall built form and character from the streetscape. These relate to desired future character principles, building height and articulation, densities, facade composition, and built form. As a result of the citing of the proposed development, an array of DCP non-compliances relating to these issues, the proposal is not considered to be compatible with the local areas required under Clause 30A of the Affordable Rental Housing Set. In this respect, Clause 30A of the Affordable Rental Housing Set requires development to be compatible with the character of the local area. The development as proposed is oppressive and due to its immediate proximity to eastern facing units, particularly levels 5 to 7 next door. For the reasons previously mentioned, the development is not considered to be harmonious in the context of the site and those surrounding. There's a planning principle which establishes what is compatible with surrounding development. This is found in the Land Environmental Court judgment for Project Venture Developments Proprietary Limited versus Pittwater Council. In this judgment, there's two questions raised. The first being, are the proposal's physical impacts on surrounding development acceptable? And secondly, is the proposal's appearance in harmony with the building around it and the character of the street? Now, given the reasons raised in Council's assessment report in terms of DCP non-compliances relating to relationship with the building next door, the potential amenity impacts, which I know some of the residents will discuss in further detail, and also the overall streetscape character and amenity, it's considered reasonable to conclude that due to the array of these matters, it's evident that, that the answers to these questions are not favourable. Now, understand that the planning controls currently allow for a development, quite a substantial development compared to what is currently there. However, notwithstanding compliance with these matters, it cannot be ignored that a suitable outcome for the residents next door and the overall amenity to the street should be maintained. For these reasons, I believe that the proposal does not satisfy the relevant considerations under section 4.15 of the EP&A Act.
I think that's what the recommendation, where it's steering, that's the conclusion of the author of the report before us says. Yeah. All right, questions? Mr. Levy?
Yes, just although we've yet to hear from the development applicant or his representative, what would be your response if it transpires that they are prepared to reduce the height from 8 stories to 7 stories? That they propose to reduce the building height to 23.1 metres, reduce the floor space ratio, and have an enhanced setback on the 7th floor to enable views of the city across the site from these facing balconies of your client's property. How would you deal with that? Although you haven't got the details, if that was to be put forward, what would be your response?
I mean, it would be a much better outcome, obviously. I think we would need to see those details to make an informed decision. I think it's getting closer. I think there'd still probably be some impact to levels 5 and 6. Another part of our submission was there's a requirement under Council's development application checklist for elevation shadow analysis to be provided. That was not provided. So as part of this application or any other amended application, it would be worth seeing that as well, not just obviously views as being topic of discussion, but also the overshadowing and loss to solar access on those balconies which face towards the east. So to answer your question, I couldn't tell you exactly if that would be supportable or acceptable, but I think it would go a long way, but we'd need to see that detail. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, nothing further? All right, thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. or Ms. J. Wang. You're in Blake Street as well?
Is it
W-A-N-G, J. Wang? Yeah. 608, number 3 Blake Street,
yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, anyway, here, thank you everyone to give me the chance to express our ideas here. I don't want to repeat whatever the people mentioned before already.
That would be helpful if you didn't repeat, because I think we already understand the view loss impacts and amenity
I just want to mention some point, because I think for the building of this building, they will have a serious damage of the ecological environment of current building A and building B, because the proposal building almost complete blocks the sunlight of the public green area from most current building A and building B area. And the second point is that this proposal 8-story building, I think will not only block the northeast direction sunlight of the resident below 8th floor in existing building A and B, but also obstruct the northeast view of those units. So serious damaging the interests of the owners, which the gentleman mentioned before already, the city will. And also the third one is, I think There's another thing I want to emphasize here is due to the site of project next to the building A and B for this 8-level building, I think it will seriously damage the foundation of the current building, because I think you all heard currently there's like problem for the Mesco Tower and Oppo Tower. I think if there's a 8 building level there, it will affect whatever. I don't want to, maybe I think in the future will affect the building's quality and whatever the foundation for the existing one. So that is quite a serious issues all the residents facing at the moment. And also, also from the overall fire safety of the current resident building, I think maintaining a reasonable distance between building A and B is necessary. However, the proposal building, just like a bridge to connect all the buildings together. So if there's any fire happen in the future, we just got a doubt, how can we execute quickly as much as possible, yeah.
Right.
And also, yeah, that's the point I want to put into. The other things I will have the same opinion as what the resident mentioned before, so I don't want to repeat here.
Okay, we'll just see if there's any, that's your submission, ma'am?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just remain seated and I'll see if there are any questions. No. Mr. Barnes?
No.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Sorry, can I give one more point? Because just now this gentleman was asked the question is if the building level reduced to level 7, like 7 level, will that we accept or not? But to be honest, because we are living in the level 6, that still will block our view. I think in the future we still object this kind of proposal. Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Edna Liang. Please come forward, ma'am. Okay, so, all right, thank you. Thank you very much. Jing Hu. Jing Hu here? No, thank you. Xiaobing Zhu? No. Catherine Liu. Please come forward, ma'am. Now you're at 508/258 Railway Parade, Cogger, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So without rehashing what everyone's already said, I'd like to express that in line with the Senior Development Assessment's recommendation that the application be refused. I think parking in particular, if we haven't talked about that, is an issue that's raised, and something that we have a concern about is the inadequate car park design. Because it's on Railway Parade, the nature of traffic, the location of the apartment in between the 2 stations, lots of schools, St. George, Cogra, lots of existing schools, 2 hospitals, TAFE. I think we know that there's a lot of stress on street parking. And so I think the fact that it doesn't already have appropriate car park design is going to impact residents directly and our neighbours. In addition to that, the safety of our pedestrians and our vehicles, mentioning that there are a lot of school students around. It's really important to keep our kids safe on the roads. And I think the report mentions sight lines, and I'm not an expert, but basically I think, yeah, traffic is a big consideration. And with the potential construction of a boarding house, with the amount of people that could be living there, yeah, that would really affect the safety of pedestrians and vehicles. Additionally, the entrance to our Viridian car park is on Blake Street, and so that would also potentially affect our traffic safety again. Yeah, and just disruption to that. I think we have touched on noise pollution already, if I'm not mistaken. from the boarding house, just the,
I don't think so, but
Okay.
you've raised it now.
okay, just the amount of residents that would be living in an 8-story building. I think that would directly impact the Viridian residents. Yeah, we would be able to hear if they're having parties, if they're raising their voices, like we would be able to hear those conversations if they, yeah, the noise pollution of that. And we mentioned solar access to the ground floor already.
Yes,
Yep,
we
okay.
have.
Yes, I guess in conclusion, I'd like to agree that it's not in the public's best interest that this, yeah,
All right.
this boarding house.
All right, I'll just see if there are any questions. Mr. Levy?
No.
Stuggy? Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Michelle Young. Is Michelle in the audience? Yep. Jason Brown. Come forward, sir. Now you're at 254 Railway Parade, Unit A 507, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Brown, you've no doubt heard the previous speakers and the issues that have been raised, so.
It's the issue when you go behind everyone else, but I think the general consensus of everyone in the development and the Viridian would agree that my unit is directly affected the most. So mine's got the balcony, and what they're basically proposing is to build a 15-metre brick wall right on top of my balcony.
So whereabouts?
On here, on this bottom part, that's my balcony, you see, on this corner.
Right.
I brought documentation, but I thought that you guys would have all that, and they sort of said not to.
Basically, it's down through. Is that one down here?
Yeah, it's right there.
So you could basically walk out to my balcony and just touch the brick wall, like it's there. And they want to build it 15 metres high. I don't know how you can come across and say that's not going to directly affect me. I'll have no sunlight in winter because the sun sets further north. It was completely blocked everything out. So I could harp on the views, but
Yeah, I don't think you need to tell us about the views.
Yeah.
We
So
understand the issues. I guess my question to you is that when you actually bought your place,
Yeah,
like
so
I've asked.
Yeah, so to touch on that,
Yeah.
there's a blank wall that's been built. So I knew looking at it, seeing that there was going to be something built. So if you go back through the archives though, once that developer with the mechanic decided he didn't want to sell because he wanted too much money, I'm pretty sure they submitted something through to council with another building that's only going to be 4 stories. And that's why they built the blank wall to that height.
Right.
And now he waited a month until we all settled and put this DO for an 8-story building. Mate, talk about stress in the family life. Like, I just can't believe it either. I'm shaking here talking to you, like it's unbelievable. See, I knew that something was going to get developed, and I'm not anti the development. Something will go there, that's fine. But something of that grand scale is just phenomenal, that he can think he can park a 15-metre brick wall on these units for me and the ones above us and say that it's not going to affect us. So, and I don't like how he's using the SEPP Act, the Affordable Housing Act, to get his bigger floor space ratio, which gives him that access to go higher, but then thinks that it's okay to go in the back door that way, but then not to worry about us residents. And it will create overshadowing massively everywhere. So, like you ask people for proposals, just build something 4 stories, the same as across the road, the same as building B at that same height. Building B only goes up to there, then it steps back higher, so it'll go in the contrast. It'll match, you know what I mean? Right.
All right.
So I've got a list of things here to talk to you about, but you've heard it all from people before, so I don't know what else I can really add.
You still have 3 minutes and the clock is still ticking, so if you want to keep going.
Keep going, you reckon? Well, he's had multiple refusals for this DA, which says within itself that it's not complying. The council done an 80-page document refusing it, which I agree and all the residents completely agree. That's why it was 153 signatures disagreeing and 60 submissions. I'll wrap it up. I just can't believe that he can submit something like that and think that it's okay and use these bylaws to try and sneak through.
How far from the edge of the boundary, your boundary property to your balcony, would you say it is? About 3 metres?
Yeah, from my sliding door, yeah, it'd be
So
about
you've got
3
your,
metres.
you go
If
out to your
you-
balcony and then
yeah,
beyond
there's a
that?
500 ml garden bed.
Yep.
So yeah, it'd be from my sliding door, it would be a 3 metre setback if you count the sliding door as the boundary. So,
Okay. Mr. Levy, any questions?
When you bought your unit, were you shown any concept sketches or plans for the proposed development
no,
next door? You just heard?
so people were talking, so we went back through on the internet, the community, when we all had some meetings about it, and I would have brought this all in, but they said not to really flood you guys with information. But there is documentation that they show that concept drawings were sent through. So the developer, Bluestone, who made out a building, showed future development that could be built on that site to make it compatible.
The isolated site.
If I read from the report that was prepared for the joint planning panel that considered this, and it said that draft sketches show a 5-storey corner redevelopment, an FSR of 4:1, would that be consistent with what you understood was the case?
Yeah, because then it wouldn't directly affect us. There'd be no brick wall. There'd be a roof level there at our height, but at least we'd still have natural sunlight. Well, that's the biggest thing for me in winter. I'm building none.
Some of your
Zero.
views might be compromised with the roof, but
Yeah, but then, compromised views with a roof is a lot better than a 15-metre brick wall, which currently is what's proposing.
And your unit is here.
Yep.
That doesn't extend into this side of the property, does it? That's a separate unit.
Yeah, they're separate units, yeah. They're not the same. So, I know you guys don't take financial stuff into consideration, but it would severely impact me financially, severely. So,
all right, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
yeah.
Our next submitter is Hong Peng Zhao. No. Zhan Wen Li. No. Okay. So that concludes the addresses by the objectors. We now turn to the applicant. We have 3 submitters registered to speak. Sam Pereira, Danny Jones and Roger Johnson. Please come forward, all 3 of you, if you wouldn't mind. We'll see if we can grab another chair. Good, thank you. Now, gentlemen, I'll be a little bit liberal here and allow you as much time as you need to address us, given the submissions and given the veracity of some of the issues that they've raised concerning sunlight, views, amenity impacts, a whole range of things. Look, the panel's aware of the fact that the application of the controls, in a strict sense, probably sterilises the site. So we're interested to hear your views addressing some of these impacts that are likely to occur, given that you're facing a refusal based on the recommendation before us today. So we want to be fair and just and give you an opportunity to address us and tell us a little bit about how you would resolve some of the concerns that the residents have raised.
Certainly. Well, thanks for the opportunity to speak. Yeah, I suppose everyone here is aware of the difficulties with the site and the circumstances of the neighbouring properties that essentially have windows 450 that essentially have windows to the south 450 off the boundary, and a balcony at certainly one point essentially built to the boundary. I won't question how they got there, but they're there. And it's something that we have to deal with design-wise and planning-wise. We've certainly we've been trying to work in conjunction with council planners as best as we possibly can to try and resolve matters relating to this site. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of meaningful dialogue since the public submission sort of phase was undertaken, despite sort of our endeavours. We're trying to get some guidance, from to look at amendments to the proposal to try and resolve some of these concerns of the residents and trying to extract what we understand are the concerns from the planning report. In respect of
I would have thought that's self-evident.
Well, yeah, but we just, in some areas, the planning report's a bit contradictory, so but from what we understand, that the key issues are essentially the upper levels interface with the neighbouring properties. So having regard to that, we've actually gone to the step of preparing some modifications that we think will go a long way to resolving all of these concerns, or certainly to the point where the panel can be satisfied that it's perfectly reasonable from a planning's perspective.
So if I understand what you're putting to us today, is you're going to be making an application for us to defer this application, give you an opportunity to regroup, so to speak.
That's correct, yeah, we are seeking a deferral. There was a bullet point summary that I'm hoping you all received it. It essentially summarises bullet point form what we're looking at changing and how we think that resolves these primary concerns. Not much utility in me reading out the list if everyone's got it.
We've got that, but
Yeah.
I mean, the utility of today's meeting is if it is the case that you want us to defer this application, then you need to make that application to us.
Yeah, that's certainly what we're requesting.
Because it seems to me that it's, it's probably not worth you addressing us on this current proposal if you're not going to persist with it.
Yeah, certainly. Well, on that note, probably better if I hand over to Roger, who's the project architect, who will run through the proposed amendments that we're looking at.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, you can perhaps run us through your ideas of what you think would be beneficial to address the issues.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Yes, we went away and we actually did some revised proposals based on the concerns which seem to be views and amenity solar access to the adjoining property at the RSL site. In view of that, we have kept the proposal using the podium levels, up to the podium levels as we discussed in our pre-DA meetings in the urban design sense of the project.
Yep.
With regard to the upper levels, we've now cut that back to 7 stories. And that was, we did some more view analysis as well with the property. And with the 7th floor to actually set that back further from Railway Parade as well. If I can just find the...
Can I ask, are you talking about 7 stories? Obviously, you're trying to maximise the yield on the site.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't necessarily equate to a good idea when you're blocking people's views.
Mm-hmm.
Given that you're, quite, the last cab off the rank, and yes, and I appreciate that probably your building envelope is somewhat compromised by virtue of the fact that you've got built form to the south and to the east.
Yes.
With windows and north-facing balconies and a whole range of amenity concerns from residents. That is a constraint that you need to address. Putting a 7-story building on a site just because you want that yield doesn't necessarily mean you'll get it. Given that you don't have a blank wall to the south.
Yeah.
If you had a blank wall to the south, you could probably get a lot higher yield out of this site. It would seem to me. I mean, again, I'm not preempting any decision we may take, but it seems that it's a difficult road to hoe when you've got balconies and windows on a building to the south that enjoy great views.
Okay.
So,
can I just show you what we've actually done since?
So this is the before and after scenario, is it?
No, this is before and after. We've actually looked at particularly the gentleman's unit 507, which seems to be most impacted.
Yeah, Mr. Brown is at
507.
507, yes.
And we've actually taken the view of the city skyline, the angle of that view, and we've taken that into account with this 7th floor. So you're quite right when you say that it's not just about reducing it to 7 floors or whatever it is. We've actually considered those views and also the solar access to that particular unit, because that's the most impacted unit. And we're offering to cut the 7th floor back to, well, it's about 2/3 of the footprint of our parcel of land. So that then maintains that view. And so from that point of view, it's a much better outcome for obviously everyone. The other units, of course, now don't have any impact. The wall will not be 15 metres high. We're trying to actually match the height of the garden planter, you know, here on the balcony. So that the views can be maintained from that side.
So you're telling me you're getting a 7-storey building against this wall?
Got the elevations there, just.
The elevations are there, yeah, that's correct.
Or it's to the podium plus 2.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's podium.
Yeah, plus, yeah, it is the podium +2. It's
So
not
we've-
7 to there.
No.
There's the elevation of Railway Parade. That's what we're proposing to do there.
Have you got an elevation from
I have.
Blake?
Okay.
We're still proposing the 3 metre setback to the southern boundary where the bedrooms are in the other apartment block. That would remain. But that's all non-trafficable area. It's all non-trafficable roof.
Right.
We've also faced the common areas away from the residents here, so there's an isolation of those areas now from the neighbours.
What about the implication of this built form on the common area behind?
We've done shadow studies of that as well, and most of the overshadowing is done by self-shadowing by the apartment block that's already there and their own podium. So we did that in the initial DA submission. We looked at that. I don't have those documents with me, but they're...
So this is unit 507?
It's 507 here.
Yep, and we also did extensive detailed shadow studies of each of those units, which was submitted at the request, well, as part of a request from council, I think, for us to do further shadow studies on each one of the apartments as well. So we did that.
That's on this amended proposal.
No, well, that's on the original proposal.
Right.
Yeah, so we're yet to do that. We've
Okay.
obviously crammed a lot in a few days to sort of
I understand.
get to where we're at.
The amended proposal.
These all satisfy, so it's only natural if you're going to drop the height of the building and reduce the overall mass of it that the solar access is going to improve in any case. So.
All right. Mr. Pereira, have you got any comments?
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm the traffic consultant, so I've got 5 items that I need to bring forward here. First one is in relation to car parking. I note that the proposal actually satisfies the statutory parking provision requirement, which is 2 car spaces at the ground level for the retail component and 2-in-1 spaces for the boarding house component.
Yeah.
In terms of car parking design, all the car spaces are compliant with the Australian standards. There is, however, a shortfall in the aisle behind the car spaces because the site is a bit too narrow to provide 5.8 meter clearance. So what we've done instead is we've compensated for this by providing much wider car spaces. Car spaces are required to be 2.4 meters.
Is your submission to us today in the context of this amended proposal?
Yes,
It is.
yes, it is.
Right.
And we've submitted to council vehicle movement paths, swept paths, demonstrating that this is a workable solution. And at the ground level, we've provided 2 vehicle waiting bays. So vehicles who are waiting to use the car lift do not queue up on Blake Street.
So what's the number of spaces with this new proposal?
23 car spaces.
23.
Yes. So we have 2 on the ground level for waiting. And I've done a queuing analysis based on the peak hour traffic generation level of this site. One thing to note is, because this is a boarding house development, the peak is not very well defined compared to typical residential building. However, assuming that it operates similar to a typical residential building, the worst case scenario would be the PM peak, where everyone is coming back from work. So there will be 10 vehicles per hour during the peak hour, based on the standard trip rates given in the RMS guide. And the service rate for the proposed car lift is 30 seconds to go from ground level to basement level 3. So that's the worst case scenario. So for a return trip, it will take 1 minute. And assuming the driver takes about a minute to enter and exit the lift, that means 2 minutes per car. That means 30 vehicles per hour is the service capacity, and 10 vehicles per hour is the demand. Using these 2 parameters, if you work out the potential for queuing, the probability of having more than 2 cars waiting is 3.7%. It's quite negligible. So it's very unlikely to happen on Blake, where people will queue up on Blake Street. In terms of sight lines, we proposed a convex safety mirror, and all vehicles have been ensured that they can exit the site in forward gear, as to improve the sight line to the pedestrians. Yeah, we have also provided a loading bay for the retail component at the ground level, and it complies with the Australian standard dimensions.
And I'm sorry, there's just one thing to add with parking as well. We had extensive negotiations with Capital Bluestone to try, on council's advice, to try and use their access via their basement car parking.
With an easement?
With an easement, that's correct. That went over many months. I noticed it's not actually recorded in the report at all, the council, so I thought... Well,
where'd you get up to with that?
Well, we actually got a letter back. We couldn't reach an agreement, a financial agreement with, but we did go through the process of doing it.
Okay.
And I just want to put it on the record that we did that.
Right.
So, and I think, you know, that's important. The other thing is, we had submitted stormwater plans only yesterday as well, which have now, we understand, resolved all the issues with stormwater with council's engineers. So.
The position is this, is that the panel, we don't have jurisdiction to deal with amended proposals on the run. So I'm going to hand those plans back to you.
Yeah, okay.
We have an application before us with a recommendation, and we have a set of plans before us. Now, if it is your desire to amend that application, then you'll need to formally do that through the provisions of the Environmental Planning Assessment Regulation, which is, as you probably well know, it's an application that you make to the council, and the council either approves it or refuses it, and you go forward from there. Our role is to do one of 3 things today. It's either approve the application subject to conditions, refuse it as recommended, or defer it. So, I mean, that's our role today. So as long as you're clear about, we're happy to entertain your oral submissions this afternoon, but with respect to your application, as I understand it today, is for deferral. All right. So just so the audience is clear, what the applicant is proposing is to suggest a deferral of the DA to give them time, to buy them some time to put in an amended proposal. Now, that amended proposal will go through the system again, and the council will then have to well, first and foremost, the council's got to agree to the amendment of the DA. It can refuse the amendment of the DA, and it just sits there like that. It doesn't go anywhere. It's the application is what it is before the council at the moment, with no further amendments to it. If the council agrees to the amendment of the development application, which is purely a matter for its discretion, it's not a matter for this panel, then that application will be assessed on its merits, and then another report will be placed before a panel like this in the future. Whether that's in the next 2 months, 3 months, I can't tell, but you would, if that's the case and the application is accepted, the amended application is accepted, you will all be neighbour notified and you'll all be given the opportunity to comment on it. So as long as we're clear about that, that's how it all works in the system. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. There's nothing further, or is there some questions?
Yeah.
Yes?
Sorry. I could just on the car parking. 2 questions. I'm just wondering if you could talk me through how a person accesses the disabled parking spot. So you've come in off the street, you've driven into the car lift in a forward direction?
No, so the car lift operates, the operation of the car lift requires drivers to enter in reverse direction. So you reverse into the car lift. So at the ground level.
Show me that at the ground.
So at the ground level, you have the full storage base. So when you enter walks into the storage bay and you reverse into the car lift.
Okay, so having reversed into the car lift, how do you then get into the disabled car space?
So when you get out at the basement level, you can move forward and just simply reverse into the disabled car space.
Then how do you get back out again?
Oh, it's symmetric, so you just drive in and reverse into the car lift. And when you go to ground level, you are facing forward here, so you simply facing forward here.
Okay, and the second question was, because the car parking is not assigned to units, it's parking across each of the boarding rooms, how do you actually know where there's a vacant space?
I think it will be allocated to units. I'm not quite sure about that.
Yeah, it's generally, it's in the plan of management.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all.
No further questions.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a decision will be taken later today and published on the council's website. I thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
Moving to item 3 on our agenda. Which is the application for number 33 Water Street, Carlton. We do not have any speakers registered to make submissions on behalf of the applicant, but we do have 3 speakers against the proposal. Terry Goodhue, please come forward, sir. Floor's all yours.
Thank you, sir. I've been a resident for over 35 years until the SAF group arrived there. And there's never been a single complaint against the factories in the light industrial area for traffic noise operations. As per the Georges River Council reports, the SAF group is operating illegally and has so far for the last 5 years. I believe there were 35 submissions against the proposal. With each submission, there was a common theme. The SAF group does not attempt to show any consideration towards the neighbours and shows complete contempt for the council and their regulations. Within the submission, there is 2 aspects. The people that are affected by the street noise, and then there are people affected by the area at the back of the Waterview Street factory. My property is directly behind the rear of 33 Waterview Street, and I can see into the rear area yard where there is an illegal waste dumping facility, as per the council's recommendation, indication, which creates dust whenever the large dump trucks drop their load and the rock crusher smashes up into rubble, which is uncontrolled and blows all around the neighbourhood, thus affecting myself, and I'm asthmatic, and my family, as well as other residences and other businesses. The application by SAF is full of statements that they cannot meet. They have a number of divisions, one of which is the road control, which includes road waste pickup, which is essentially night work. And we have often had their trucks dumping their loads in the rear of 33 Waterview Street at all hours of night. So their 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is not able to be achieved. The site is listed as light industrial. They have a number of 20-tonne plus high-pressure vehicles, as well as large tip trucks operating from the site. These vehicles are not suited for a light industrial site, as well as the surrounding tonnage restricted streets. The report from the council shows that SAF has supplied insufficient information and have asked for extensions a number of times. Again, this is just a stalling tactic, and they do not adhere to any of the requirements by the council's regulation, whilst not respond to the council's request. There have been, I believe, there have been countless parking fines, infringement notices issued to the SAF group, but this still does not deter the SAF group at all. This company has a reputation of doing what they want when it suits them, and depending on their projects, they choose to come and go as they please. The site at 33 Waterview Street is gazetted light industrial, not a waste transfer station or not a heavy site. On most weekdays, their large tip trucks are cleaned in the rear yard using high-pressure gurney-style devices, with the water waste running off into the local drainage system. As per their application, no work will be happening on Sundays. The Sunday just gone, on Sunday the 16th of February, at 7 a.m. to 8 a.m, the high-pressure system was operating, and Monday morning, the 17th of February, between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m, there was some sort of motor running within the factory. This demonstrates their continual flouting of the supposed working hours, as well as complete and disrespect for the residents who boarded the site. Their attitude has not changed over the last 5 years, so this application by the SAF group really means nothing. They are just going to keep doing what they've done so in the past. So I object strongly to this application on every aspect, and they are the wrong company in the wrong area.
All right. Thank you. I'll just see if there are any questions of the panel. Levy? Thank you. No? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Our next submitter is, I've just got the name of Mary. Mary, please come forward.
Mary Wood.
Good afternoon. Thank you for listening to my little talk. I'm not going to reiterate everything that was said in our submission because reading from your report, everything is covered, and I must commend you on the thoroughness of the report that was on the council website. I will be dealing with the Lloyds Avenue perspective, speaking on behalf of the residents that are unavailable. Terry has pointed out a few things, so I won't go over them, as in the illegal operating for 5 years, despite the numerous complaints council must have had. It just seems to have gone on, and you get very disheartened when you complain and you complain and you complain to the council and really nothing happens. They just seem to go on and on. I was going to say about reports that they're supposed to have put in for this DA, that hasn't happened. My father built the house there in 1946 and I've lived there for the last 70 years. It's a family home and I was brought up there. I've brought my children up there and the grandchildren in and out the house on a regular basis. We have never had any trouble. That factory's been there since about 1970. And we have never had any trouble with any residents in that factory over all those years. Everyone has got along fine, not too much noise, not too much pollution, and all happy families. Until, of course, the SAF group moved in 5 years ago. From my aspect, you know, we back onto their backyard. The rock crushing and the sifting gets so loud at times you have to take ourselves indoors, shut the door to hear ourselves speak. It's absolutely beyond anything that should be like 50 yards from my back door. In that is all the dreadful dust that floats into every house along the street, and who knows what's in it in regards to BTEX, asbestos, silica. No one has ever checked what's in that rubbish that they sift and proceed down in the back there. All the neighbours are affected. It's like living behind a building site that never stops. My husband and I are in our 70s and, like everyone in the street, don't need this extra health worry in our lives. I'm talking about the health problem. Surely they've got to move this part of their operation to another site away from a residential area. Surely common sense would tell them that all this dust and dirt going to the neighbours must one day come back on them if their health is injured by this, all this dirt and dust. It is a significant and possibly dangerous health issue that has never been addressed and should not be allowed to continue. I would like to know what happens if the DA is rejected or deferred. Will it just be the same? Will they carry on regardless, like they've always had? They don't seem to follow any rules that are set. They were working last Sunday and the Sunday before. For example, complained to the council, nothing seems to happen. It's a bit of a waste of time. I would like to thank you for listening and would ask you to consider what I've said.
All right. In relation to your last comments about what's going to happen should this panel refuse this application and adopt the recommendation, if that occurs, then it's not a matter for this panel to enforce the refusal, so to speak. It's a matter for the council to exercise its discretion, its regulatory discretion, to investigate the breaches and take action. Now, that action, there's a whole series of things the council can do. It can issue a number of orders under the Act, or it can take civil enforcement proceedings to restrain the breaches of the Act. It can take criminal prosecution proceedings to seek punishment for the breaches to the Act. So there's a number of, when I say remedies, available to council. But that is a matter that the council has to pursue, and it's not a matter that we, as the 4 independent panellists here today, can do anything about, because we just simply don't have jurisdiction or the delegation to deal with that. Our role is just to determine the application as put to us as a development application. Yep. So I can't foreshadow what the council may or may not do, but I think the council officers that are here today have heard your submissions.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
I'll just see if there are any other questions for you. Levy?
Just quick, Mrs. Wood. The council back in November 2018 issued a noise control notice to the SAF group and about offensive noise and sleep disturbance caused to neighbouring properties, and they listed the following activities: movement of heavy vehicles, loading and unloading of heavy equipment, beeping noise from reversing commercial vehicles, persons shouting over vehicle noise, and opening and closing of roller shutters. Is that the case today? Are those the issues that you still complain about today?
That is the case today, but I am dealing with the back end of the factory. I'm sure another speaker will deal with those issues in that we also hear the beeping of the reversing trucks, and they drop something in that factory, it's like an echo chamber, it's a big bang, you know. But I think someone else will be speaking about those issues today.
Another thing I should clarify is that I omitted to advise you that you can seek your own legal advice as a group, and you have third-party rights of standing to commence a proceeding against the SAP group yourself.
Right.
But that's purely a matter that you should seek your own legal advice about.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sandora Chia. Please come forward, ma'am. Yeah, sure. That's fine. And you are, sir? You're?
Martin Brown.
Martin Brown. Okay. Please proceed, ma'am.
Yeah, council members, my name is Sandra Chia of 145 West Avenue. My property backs onto the front of 33 Watersfield Street. I'm here today to express my strong objections against the DA submitted by the SAF group to change the use of 33 Waterfield Street to a depot. Over the last 5 years, my life and the life of my family has been in a living hell. We are unable to sleep, we are unable to relax,
We are unable to enjoy the peace and quiet of our own home. We fear for our health and we fear for our safety. We understand that we live on the edge of a light industrial zone. However, for the last 5 years, it has felt like we live next door to a 24/7 construction site. Do you know what it is like to have to sleep with earplugs every single night? Do you know what it is like to have to close every single window in the house, day in and day out, due to the fear of the contaminated dust and noise? Council members, in my submission, I have been clear around why the DA should be rejected. And I pointed to the false claims made by staff group in their statement of environmental effect. I will summarize these points again. Please note that all points below are supported with ample photo and video evidence in my submission. The noise test conducted by Quietcast Acoustic was falsified. The staff group completely changed their daily routine for the duration of the noise test. And the parking issue, the report suggests that there is ample parking for over 18 vehicles. This is false. There's no vehicle parking inside their premises. They all just park across the driveway on a natural strip in no parking zone and double parked. Over the last week, the staff group has been busy moving material from the inside the premises to another location to ensure that you are presented with what look like ample parking during the site visit. I sincerely request you not to be fooled by what you see in the site visit, as it is not representative of reality. Waste handling, the improper handling of dust and construction material is a grave environment concern. And I'm even more concerned when I read the report saying that they failed to hand in the soil contamination report. Make me even more worried that my worry maybe is real. Operating hours, staff group have no regard to operating condition or local planning law. The nature of the operation dictates that they must be able to work 24/7, 7 days a week. We all know that major road construction and road maintenance activity occur during the night. On so many nights, we have been woken up at all hours by vehicle entering and exiting the premises, loading and unloading. Council-owned planning regulation require movement into the premises to be in forward direction at all times. The premises are not able to accommodate this, causing trucks and vehicles to have to reverse in and out. The sound of truck reversing with their warning beeps is something that etched into the memory of every single resident. I can even hear the beeping in my ear when there's no reversing truck. That's how bad it is. It's mentally disturbing.
Take a moment, ma'am. Do you need some water?
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
It's just been too long, this thing. It's just...
All right.
Okay. Council member, I implore you to accept the recommendation of your own staff to reject this DA. I have no doubt that your site visit today to 33 Waterview Street would have been painted a nice and rosy picture. But please be aware that this is all a cover-up and does not represent the living nightmare that we as residents have been forced to accept for the last 5 years. We are not here to deprive any business of opportunity to be successful, but not at the expense of the neighborhood and our health and safety. You are dealing with an organization that has threatened and abused residents to the extent that many of them are too scared to address to you today in fear of retribution. I stand before you today with fear, but I cannot let this fear of what they may or may not do to me dictate the future of my neighborhood.
Right. Thank you for your courage and your ability to address us today. We do appreciate your stress, and we thank you for your submission. I'll see if there are any questions, Mr. Levy.
No.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank
you. Would you like to get some water?
Have some.
I have water.
All right, I think that concludes our speakers in relation to that matter. So a decision will be taken later today by the panel and published on the council's website. So that concludes that matter. We now move to the next item on our agenda, is number 66 Mulga Road, Oatley. There are no, sorry, pardon me. Victoria Street, Cogra, pardon me. Number 18 to 24 Victoria Street, Cogra. We have, speaking on against the proposal, Leo Wang. Sorry.
He's the applicant.
I'm sorry, pardon me. I'm just reading the running sheet here. In support of the application, not in support of the item, so this is incorrect. Leo Wang from Enhanced Projects. On behalf of the applicant.
Yeah.
It says not in support of the item.
So it's all right.
Okay, no, we've sorted that out. Okay, and you must be Julie Horder, is that correct? Right. Please come forward. And Tassos Bastos. Okay, so we don't have anyone speaking against you, so that's a good thing for you, isn't it? All right, sorry, the running sheet was incorrect.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. All right, now this application is recommended for refusal. Who would like to go first?
Yes, I'll go first. Julie Horder from Planning Ingenuity, so Town Planner for the applicant in this matter. I'm not sure if you received it, but I did put a letter in a couple of days ago just requesting a deferral of this matter. No, may not have come through.
We'll just take some instructions on that. There was? Okay, that wasn't part of our package.
I do have copies here.
So, do we have a copy? Yeah, all right.
I do have copies.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind providing us with a copy each, that'd be good. Michael. All right, and I'll provide one to the council officers as well, if I may.
So basically, just to summarise that letter, and I will summarise it rather than go through each and every sort of matter there. And I know it's generally sort of faux pas to criticise council's assessment process, but it is pertinent to this matter. As I was putting my letter, the DA has been with council for 27 months and has been handled by 4 different assessment officers. And it's only really been since December last year that we've managed to obtain some clear feedback from council. Unfortunately, the feedback was in the context of having to push this matter to a panel for determination due to the length of time the DA has been with council, so not leaving the applicant adequate time to address these matters. Notwithstanding, the applicant made every effort to address these matters through preparing amended plans and reports over the Christmas period. Regrettably, the entire package of documents required by council was unable to be submitted before council's deadline for this report today.
Right.
It is with this background that we ask for the matter to be deferred. The deferral will allow for the applicant to submit the amended package, additional supporting documents. They are either completed or close to being completed at this stage, and then that will now allow council to complete their assessment and also resolve those issues raised in the assessment report.
And I suspect that that's probably a course of action you want us to adopt because your appeal rights have lapsed.
Correct. Yes. And in that way as well, I think giving us a deferral obviously is a better outcome than taking this matter to Land Environment Court as an actual refusal. So that would be, I think, best for both parties, council and ourselves.
Right.
Our objective would be to have the matter referred back to the panel by April. As I said, we're pretty close to having the whole package together. So we're not asking for an extensive amount of time. We're pretty close to.
All right. So it seems to me academic that we, again, I don't want to cut you off, but it seems academic that, the submissions that you're going to make to us are OTOs, more or less, given that you're intending to amend your application. So the application before us is a bit of a nullity.
Yes, yes. So I think the plans, and Mr. Bastos will sort of go through as well, the ones that are assessed under the application aren't the ones that we put in January because it wasn't considered to be a complete package. So we're sort of moved a couple of versions on.
Has council, which you might have heard me in a previous matter, granted approval for you to rely on these amended plans?
I suppose they haven't entirely, because they've said that we haven't got a complete package for them to do that assessment.
Right.
Sorry, Julia, they've relied on documents staying at the council around about probably August 2019, so they really are outdated documents.
No, but in relation to this recent package that was submitted on or around about Christmas, before Christmas?
January.
You'll need to get approval from the council to rely on those. Has that been done?
We've had some meetings, which was December, to say we will submit this package, and we tried our best to obviously do it over the Christmas period. We didn't quite get there. So I do believe that there is some movement from council to accept that, but nothing formal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of a threshold issue for us today, because obviously if you're making submissions to tell us about how you're amending things, that's one thing, but we don't have an amended application before us. All we have is the application which, for want of a better term, is superseded by this fresh information that's been submitted in January.
Yes, well, it was submitted, I'd say, like a 90% package and accepted by council in January.
Received, and that's the difference. Receiving, it's one thing; being accepted by the council is another, because they have to formally write to you and say, yes, we're prepared to allow you to amend your development application. Now, that's not what's before us today. What's before us is the older version.
Yes, that's correct.
Which is recommended for refusal. Now, I appreciate, you've gone through the pain and anguish of how long? 27 months. So it's a two-year birthday. Okay, well, what's to address us on? I mean, I'm just curious, that's all, given.
Can I go through some of the
details? Sure, you can, but that's not what was before us, that's all. So, what you're going to tell us today in your submission is not relevant to the application before us. Would that be correct? More or less.
It's more or less relates. It's sort of part and parcel. The basis really of this updated proposal is that we met with council, and we were given the opportunity to revise and update drawings, which we did over the Christmas New Year period. We were supposed to go to the South City Planning Panel, and we were later
based on value, or
well, until January. We were told, oh, hang on, that meeting was brought forward from the 20th to the 6th of February, so we had to push harder to get the documents. We did all that. We basically were trying to work with council. And
just hold on. So inferentially, you've been given the green light by council to put in amended plans to amend your development application.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So if that's the case, and we need to take instructions from our officers of council.
There's also a reference to the report that amended package has been received, but it hasn't been reviewed.
That's correct in the timeline. There is a reference to it.
I appreciate that, but the plans that are the subject of this development application before us today are the ones that you're not relying on.
That's right.
And we're not talking to those plans as well,
No,
I should say.
Right.
We're simply asking for a deferral.
Right, okay, well, then it might be best if we just leave it at that. And again, I'm not trying to cut you off, but you understand that what you're going to tell me about, or tell the panel about the good things about this amended package isn't before us.
No, but I guess it's just to rephrase in the context that we can address council's issues, and I
Sure.
think that's important.
Yeah.
All right.
The importance is that you understand that the updated proposal that was prepared in close discussion with council has addressed pretty well most of the issues that have been reported as negative in this current assessment report. So I think it's very important you need to know that. We weren't given the opportunity to discuss any further with the council because we understood that it was going to be a deferral, but I actually got off the phone to advise my client that it was going to be a deferral. And then my client gets the email from council and says, hang on, what's going on? He said, it's been refused, a recommend for refusal. I said, well, that's not my understanding.
Right.
So you have to understand our situation is that we have tried to work with council. We're not really rednecks or anything like that.
we're trying to do the right thing. We've been very patient over the 2 years. There have been 4 planners, council assessment planners, and every planner, as you understand, has the individual idiosyncrasies in terms of preferences and so on. And we've tried to accommodate that in every stage of the process.
Yeah.
We do accept that the initial proposals breached a number of height limits, and we understand the FSO was fine, but later we were told it was probably not fine. But all of that has been addressed in the current proposal, and that's why we're here before you asking for a deferral, because we think that the documents and the design that we've updated, and it's pretty well about 85% complete in terms of all documentation. We've provided a lot of support and documents to the council, but our client said, well, look, let's just hang on until we go before we commit any further costs to other consultant costs work, until we hear what if we can get this deferred. But essentially, there's a basics report and a planning report. That's probably about the only outstanding things, and then any other item that maybe needs a bit more clarification has been raised since the assessment report has been presented to you. So really, we're here before you because we want to work with council and we want to do the right thing. We believe this is a very, probably in the street, it's probably one of the more important sites because it's on a sort of a half bend in the street,
yeah.
and therefore it has a high significance. But we've also, there is a public thoroughfare through the site that's incorporated in the design, and the building has a number of aspects, public domain aspects, and there's a lot of community benefits being provided out of this project, and a lot of the issues, pretty well all the issues have been addressed in the updated proposal that we believe will be beneficial to the community and the outcome of this building.
Mm. And I suppose if this panel was to refuse your application, you have that option obviously to appeal to the court. You won't get a Section 34 conference until September, October now, and or you could start afresh.
Oh, review.
8.2, that's right. Okay, so.
But we're hoping not to do.
Yes, yeah, no, I'm just trying to workshop through the scenarios for you. All right. Do you have a question?
Just one question. That one of the deficiencies that was picked up in the assessment report was a number of areas where the proposal didn't meet the apartment design guide. I'm just wondering where you're going with your revised proposal in terms of compliance with the ADG.
Sure.
Without going into a lot of detail.
No. I'll point out the main things here. FSR was reported as over 4:1. It's 3.684 to 1. So it's under the 4:1 maximum.
You're excluding your corridors.
Including corridors. The height of the building is within the height limit, with the exception of lift and stair runs will be subject to a section 4.6 variation. Building setbacks have been increased on the north, east and west elevations.
To meet ADG requirements?
Yes. So on the east and the west, it's 6 metres and it steps back in.
So 6 and 9 is able to be achieved on the side.
6 metres, it comes back to 7.5 on the east elevation, and 9 metres at the top level. On the west, on the east elevation, it's set back 6 metres, and the rear portion of the building, and the front portion actually has further setbacks. Okay, so but there are no windows, and if there are any openings, it's screened basically.
Has that impacted your yield?
Yes. We've gone from 68 to 63 units. The car parking has come down from 57 to 49 car spaces, and the basement floor plate has been reduced so that we have an increase in the deep soil zone area. And most of that deep soil zone area is located along the west boundary where the heritage buildings neighbours are. And that coincides with the public thoroughfare, which will not only have outdoor recreational spaces, but will have large tree screening possible.
Right, but again, I don't want to cut you off, but I mean, all this is very academic if we don't have the application before us.
Sure.
So I appreciate that you're highlighting the shortcomings that you've overcome, but as I said to you earlier, what's before us is an application which is superseded in your eyes.
That's right.
All right, okay. Any further questions, panel? All right. So your application today is for a deferral. Okay,
that's what we're.
Right, that's clear. All right. Well, thank you. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, yes, it's not.
Just quickly.
Yeah, just quickly. Nothing academic, but I'm the client representative for the clients.
Yeah.
The client, has a genuine intent to develop this site, and they have allocated a lot of resource and investment into this property. So it has been a very, intensive journey for the client to experience like 27 months and then out of a sudden a rejection. So we appreciate your recommendation for deferral. So it allows us more time to develop the scheme, show to the council, which is what we discussed. Yeah, we just want to express from
democratic process here. No decisions have been made.
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your attendance.
Okay. Thank you, panel members. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we move to our final item, which is number 66 Mulga Road, Oakley, which is the modification application. We do not have anyone registered to speak for or against the proposal, so a decision will be taken later today and published on the council's website, and that concludes the Georges River Local Planning Panel meeting for the 20th of February 2020. I thank you for your attendance. It's now 5:58 p.m. Thank you.